Morbid Coincidences, Part 3. In 1954, Ann Hodges was hit with a softball-sized meteorite while taking a nap in her Alabama home. She remains the only known human to ever be hit by a meteorite. Jeremy Moody was a guest at a party for lifeguards who were celebrating going an entire season without anyone drowning. But at the end of the party, with over 100 lifeguards present, Jeremy's body was found at the bottom of the pool. In 1996, a man's body floated up to a boat in the seas of the UK. There was no identification on the body except for a 25-year-old Rolex Oyster on his wrist. Thanks to Rolex maintaining such meticulous service records, they were able to identify the man and ultimately his killer. In the 1980s, a family owned a ceramic factory in California called Oscar Ceramics. But in 1987, the factory was shut down when it was revealed to be an illegal crematorium. This only happened when a passerby who happened to be a Holocaust survivor recognized the smell of burning bodies from his time at Auschwitz. Morbid NFL Facts, Part 3. When he was a sophomore in college, NBA legend Karl Malone had a child with a 13-year-old girl. The son grew up to become NFL player Demetrius Bell, but he said he only met his dad on one occasion after graduating high school, where Malone told him it was too late for a father-son relationship and that he would have to make his way on his own. In 1993, NFL player Jeff Alm crashed his car while under the influence, killing his best friend but leaving Jeff completely unharmed. Alm then retrieved a shotgun from the wreck, fired 2 desperation shots in the air, and then sat down and took his own life. After 9/11, NFL safety Pat Tillman turned down a multi-million-dollar offer from the Cardinals to instead join the U.S. Army. He served several combat tours in the Army Rangers before he was tragically killed by friendly fire in the mountains of Afghanistan. Prior to his death, Tillman called the American invasion and occupation of Iraq effing illegal. Morbid President Facts, Part 1. In 1944, a group of American airmen were shot down by the Japanese. Out of the 10 men, 9 of them were captured, tortured, executed, and cannibalized. The only man who evaded capture and survived was future President George H.W. Bush. White House police officer Leslie Coffelt was fatally shot while protecting President Truman from an assassination attempt. But he managed to kill the attacker with a headshot from 30 feet away just before dying. As many as 3 U.S. presidents, as well as Abe Lincoln's son, likely died as a result of contaminated water in the White House. Until 1850, there was no sewage system, and a field of human excrement called night soil flowed freely into the water supply. After President Andrew Garfield was shot, his negligent doctors kept digging into the wound with dirty hands and tools, attempting to find the bullet. They gave him such a bad abdominal infection that he had to be fed through his anus for the last 3 months of his life. His assassin openly confessed at a trial of the shooting, but argued that Garfield's doctors had actually done the killing. Morbid Facts, Part 400. Kim Jong-un's older brother Kim Jong-nam was supposed to be the next heir to North Korea's throne, but he's believed to have lost his position at the age of 30 after trying to get into Disneyland Japan with a fake passport. Because of the embarrassment he caused his father, Jong-nam was exiled from the country and later assassinated by the North Korean government after many failed attempts. In 2006, 27-year-old Ohio State medical student Brian Schaefer entered a bar with some friends. After security cams recorded him entering through the bar's only public entrance, Schaefer was never seen exiting the bar and has not been seen nor heard from since. Here's an example of a pillory, which was used as a form of capital punishment in 19th century China. The man in the photo can't reach his face with his hands, so he must rely on pedestrians to feed him and give him water like a dog. The device also made it incredibly hard to sleep comfortably, essentially torturing the prisoner until they died from starvation. This is the tragic story of the Boy Scout who made his entire neighborhood radioactive. Nicknamed the Nuclear Boy Scout, David Hahn was a teenager from Michigan who was obsessed with nuclear radiation. When he was only 15, David attempted to build a nuclear reactor in his backyard shed, using radioactive material from household items including vintage clocks, smoke detectors, and gun sights. Within 2 years, David had built a functioning reactor which gave off enough radiation to be detected throughout his entire neighborhood. David was soon caught by police when they found hazardous materials in his car during a routine stop and thought he was building an atomic bomb. When David's shed was raided by the EPA, they determined that his project had created dangerous levels of radiation, leading them to dismantle the building and classify it as hazardous waste. This mugshot from 2006 shows David covered in sores as a result of his extensive exposure to radiation. This, combined with continuous legal and mental health issues, led to David's early passing at the age of 39 from an accidental overdose. Morbid Facts, Part 402. George Lopez has a genetic condition that caused his kidneys to slowly deteriorate. So when he needed a new kidney in 2005, his wife Anne gave him one of her own. A couple years later, George reportedly cheated on his wife, then divorced her in 2010, all while wearing her kidney. The first scientist to observe penguins engaging in gay intercourse, grape, and necrophilia was so disturbed that he tried to obscure his findings to prevent people from knowing the truth about penguins. In 1995, a substitute school bus driver in Illinois stopped at a red light with the back part of the bus still on some train tracks. The children were screaming for her to move the bus forward as a train approached, but she was confused about what they meant. The train struck the bus at 60 miles per hour and 7 children were killed. In 2018, Gloria Williams pleaded guilty to posing as a nurse to abduct Kamaya Mobley from her mother's arms in the maternity ward. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison, the same length of time Kamaya was separated from her birth family. Morbid Facts, Part 403. Liam Neeson's wife, actress Natasha Richardson, was taking a beginner ski lesson on a bunny hill when she suddenly fell without a helmet on. She initially refused any medical help but complained about a severe headache a few hours later. Richardson was soon flown to the hospital where she died 2 days later from a brain bleed. A park ranger on Rinka Island once sat down in his office and was attacked by a Komodo dragon hiding under his desk. Turns out the cleaner had accidentally left the door open the night before and the massive lizard snuck inside. The ranger received 30 stitches at the hospital and managed to survive, but has since quit his job and now suffers from PTSD. Harvard Law School professor Roger Fisher had an interesting idea to prevent the unjustified launch of nuclear weapons. He proposed implanting the US nuclear launch codes inside a person's body next to their heart, so that the president would have to take a life in order to activate the country's nuclear weapons. Weird Crime Facts, Part 1. In 1967, 15-year-old James Gordon Wolcott shot and killed his mother, father, and older sister after sniffing airplane glue. After being diagnosed with schizophrenia, he spent only 7 years at a psychiatric hospital before being released back into the public. Today, he is an award-winning psychology professor and the head of Millikan University's Behavioral Science Department. Never forget the suspicious story behind Gary Webb. Gary was an award-winning investigative journalist who was one of the first to break the story of the CIA's involvement in the cocaine trade. In 2004, Gary was found dead in his home with 2 gunshot wounds to the head, but his death was officially ruled a suicide. Weird Crime Facts, Part 2. The young man on the left broke into his neighbor's house wielding a knife and threatened to kill the old man. But 72-year-old Frank Cordy happened to be a former boxing champion, and he gave the burglar a lawful beatdown. The Antwerp diamond heist in 2003 was one of the biggest robberies in history. A Belgian man stole $100 million in diamonds after bypassing 10 levels of high security. He had almost gotten away with it, but was convicted via DNA evidence on a salami sandwich that he'd left near the crime scene. Weird Movie Facts, Part 1. Johnny Depp said he based his depiction of Willy Wonka on how he imagined former President George W. Bush to act while stoned. This is what the set of the original black and white Addams Family TV show looked like in color. The actor who played Danny in The Shining didn't know it was a horror movie until he was done with filming. He was led to believe that he was just filming a drama movie of a family that lives in a hotel. A group of psychologists studied 400 movies to find the most realistic psychopath, and the winner was Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men. They said that he seems to be effectively invulnerable and resistant to any form of humanity or emotion. Weird Crime Facts, Part 3. In 1980, autistic savant Mark DeFriest was sentenced to 4 years in prison after quote-unquote stealing tools left to him in his father's will. However, his original sentence has since developed into 34 years after 13 escape attempts, 7 of which were successful. Disturbing Fan Theories, Part 1. Drake and Josh came to an abrupt end because Crazy Steve murdered Josh along with his parents and kidnapped Megan. He then fled with her to Seattle, changed their identities, and gave her Stockholm Syndrome, while brainwashing her into believing that they were siblings and their father was lost at sea. Crazy Steve was only crazy as a result of years of being neglected by his own family, but Carly helped fill in this void, allowing Steve to act far more sane while reigniting his passion for art. Crazy Steve also attempted to murder Drake and he survived, but suffered from serious brain damage and amnesia as a result of the attack. This is why when Drake visits Carly in iCarly, he asks her,
"Where's Josh? Where's Mom and Dad?"
Carly triggered the memory of his family, but he couldn't remember what happened to them. Eventually, someone recognizes Carly from her web show, finally prompting the arrest of mass murderer Crazy Steve. This is why Crazy Steve can be seen in a mental asylum in the iCarly spin-off Sam and Cat. These disturbing facts will completely shatter your perception of time. Joe Biden was born closer to Abe Lincoln's presidency than to his own. If someone born today were sworn in at age 78, the same age Biden was, they would become president in the year 2106. When the microchip was invented in 1958, Belgium was still displaying people from the Congo in human zoos. T-Rex lived closer in time to humans than to the Stegosaurus. Jack the Ripper was actively murdering people, Van Gogh painted Starry Night, the Eiffel Tower was completed, and Nintendo was founded, all in the year 1889. The 10th U.S. President, John Tyler, who was born in 1790, has grandchildren that are still alive today. The last widow of a Civil War veteran just died in 2020. 17-year-old Helen Jackson married 93-year-old James Bolin in 1936 so that she could claim his military pension after he died. And lastly, there are more slaves today than at any point in the history of the world. Paintings with disturbing backstories, Part 2. This painting was created by Maria Farmer, the first victim to speak out against Jeffrey Epstein. She claims this is an FBI diagram of the circle of connections to Epstein. It features people like the Clintons, Bill Gates, and the Rothschilds, and depicts Ghislaine Maxwell as a bloodthirsty reptile. Artist William Udermolen was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 1995. Over the next 5 years, he drew these self-portraits of himself, which display the devastating effects of the disease. This was painted by serial killer John Wayne Gacy, aka the Killer Clown, while in prison. It depicts him as Snow White and expresses the strange obsession he had with the 7 dwarves. President FDR was having a portrait painted of himself when he suffered a stroke. He died later that day, and this unfinished portrait captured his final waking moments. Disturbing fan theories, Part 2. There's a theory that states Breaking Bad is a sequel to Malcolm in the Middle, but Walter White isn't Hal, he's a grown-up version of Malcolm. For starters, for those who don't know, Malcolm's dad in the show, Hal, is actually played by Bryan Cranston, so it's completely reasonable to assume that Malcolm would grow up to look like him. In the sitcom, Malcolm is very fond of chemistry, and in one episode he even uses a chemistry set to create an explosion. Malcolm is also incredibly smart, stubborn, manipulative, and can develop complex plans just like Walter White. Not to mention, Walter is also estranged from his mother throughout Breaking Bad, alluding to the idea that Malcolm eventually wanted nothing to do with Lois. Additionally, Malcolm's grandfather happens to be named Walter, and he's the only family member who openly appreciates Malcolm's genius. So the theory posits that Malcolm changed his name to Walter as a tribute to his late grandfather, and at some point moved down to Albuquerque to escape from his crazy family. Known as the Houdini of Florida, DeFreeze could replicate any key by memorizing their pattern and reconstructing them out of anything available. Serial rapist Billy Milligan had a mental disorder that split his mind into at least 24 different personalities. Each personality featured a different speech pattern, accent, and sitting position. He was famously acquitted in court due to the claim that 2 of his alternate personalities had committed the crimes without Milligan being aware of it. Weird Crime Facts, Part 4. This photo is the definition of fear. A young woman in LA was evading a home intruder by hiding on her roof, and she managed to grab her phone and call 911. She said that her greatest fear was that the intruder would try to hide where she was hiding. Authorities soon had the area surrounded, and the man is now in prison. The top map shows mysterious cases of people vanishing without a trace. The bottom map shows America's largest cave systems. Juan Catalan spent nearly 6 months in jail for the murder of a teenage girl. He was the prime suspect only until his lawyer found some unused footage from HBO's Curb Your Enthusiasm. The footage proved that Catalan had been at a Dodgers game with his 6-year-old daughter at the time of the murder. Weird Movie Facts, Part 2. Real bees were used during the filming of the 90s horror trilogy Candyman. Over the course of the 3 movies, actor Tony Todd got stung 23 times. The producers paid him $1,000 per sting. The gory horror film Cannibal Holocaust was so realistic that the director was charged with murder. Cast and crew members had to appear before an Italian court to prove that the film's special effects were not actual torture. The Nightmare Before Christmas had 24 frames to a second, meaning they had to pose characters 24 times for each second of the movie. In total, the movie consisted of roughly 110,000 frames. Don't watch this one unless you're ready to cry. In 1939, a mentally disabled 23-year-old man named Joe Arity was falsely accused of the rape and murder of a teenage girl. He was sentenced to death in Colorado, and the moments leading to his execution are nothing short of heartbreaking. Joe was known for playing with a toy train given to him by the warden, who called Joe the happiest prisoner on death row. It was clear, however, that Joe didn't understand the situation or his impending execution. For his last meal, he requested ice cream and even saved some for after the execution. He was reported to have smiled while being brought to the gas chamber and was only momentarily nervous until the warden grabbed his hand and reassured him. Arity was officially pardoned 72 years after his death, after evidence had proven that he was coerced into confession. Weird Movie Facts, Part 3. It is widely believed that Shrek was modeled after Maurice Tillett, aka the world's ugliest man. He was a celebrated pro wrestler in the 1940s who suffered from acromegaly, a condition that results in bone overgrowth and thickening. Despite the rumors, DreamWorks has never openly commented on this. Morbidly Wholesome Facts, Part 64. In 1998, Wu-Tang member Old Dirty Bastard witnessed a car accident from the window of his Brooklyn recording studio. He quickly ran outside and organized onlookers to help lift the car off of a trapped 4-year-old girl. Using a fake name, ODB later visited the girl frequently in the hospital while she recovered from first-degree burns. When the Red Army captured Hitler's bunker in May of 1945, the only person they found alive was the mechanic Johannes Henschel. After everyone else had either fled or taken their own lives, Henschel had stayed behind to keep the field hospital in the building above supplied with water and power. During the Las Vegas shooting, 29-year-old Marine veteran Taylor Winston's military training kicked into action. He quickly stole someone's truck to drive any wounded victims to the hospital. He and his girlfriend made 2 trips as the shooting took place, picking up the most critically injured victims, and his heroic action likely saved over a dozen lives. Morbid Facts, Part 404. In 2001, actress Rebecca Gayheart struck and killed a 9-year-old boy who was attempting to cross the street. Other cars had stopped to allow the boy to cross, but she apparently lost her patience and drove into the turn lane to go around them, accidentally running the boy over in the process. She only received probation and a $2,800 fine. A Canadian man getting a rectal exam by his doctor at the hospital was observed by people he assumed were medical students. But he ended up suing the hospital and the observers after learning they were actors who played doctors on the TV show Saving Hope and were trying to prepare for their roles. A man from Alabama recently died after having the wrong organ removed during a horrific surgery in Florida. 70-year-old Bill Bryan was scheduled to have his spleen removed, but the surgeon mistakenly removed his liver instead. According to medical records, the surgeon didn't realize his mistake at the time and proceeded to label the removed liver specimen as Morbidly Wholesome Facts, Part 65. In the year 2000, pro wrestler Bam Bam Bigelow, who was known for his iconic Flames outfit and head tattoo, received second-degree burns over 40% of his body while rescuing 3 children from a house fire. He spent 10 days recovering in the hospital after saving their lives. In 2017, a 9-foot-long alligator clamped onto the leg of 10-year-old Florida girl Juliana Osa. But luckily, she remembered a life-saving trick she recently learned at Gatorland theme park. She stuck her fingers up the gator's nose and it instantly released her leg and took off. For For the first few years of his life, Mason McDeed cried constantly from his issues with cerebral palsy. His parents struggled to find any way to comfort him until one day his dad put on some Metallica. Soon he noticed Mason had immediately stopped crying and fell asleep, which would work every time he played heavy metal music thereafter. Ever since this revelation, Mason has attended over 500 metal concerts with his dad. Morbid Facts, Part 405. In Connecticut, 1986, 39-year-old flight attendant Helly Crafts was brutally murdered by her husband Richard after she caught him cheating on her. He then put her body through a wood chipper and ground her remains into a lake. Richard was sentenced to 50 years in prison but has since been released. Today would have been the 50th birthday of Iranian filmmaker Babak Karamdan. In 2021, he was murdered by his parents in an honor killing for still being single at the age of 46. Babak's parents confessed to drugging and stabbing their son several times, later stating that they were proud of their actions and showed no remorse. An Indiana judge recently ruled that taxpayers will be funding the sex reassignment surgery of a vicious murderer in prison. Jonathan Richardson was convicted of fatally strangling his 11-month-old stepdaughter in 2001. The ruling states that the surgery is a medical necessity that is required to prevent a risk of serious bodily and psychological harm. This elderly couple just agreed to be euthanized. Former Royal Air Force engineer Pete Scott and his retired nurse wife Christine have signed up for a double SUI pod in Switzerland, where voluntary assisted SUI has been legal since 1942. The pair made the decision after 80-year-old Christine was diagnosed with early-stage vascular dementia. Married for 46 years, they plan to die peacefully together in each other's arms with the help of the sarcophagus pod. This controversial death capsule works by replacing air with 100% nitrogen, which quickly renders the occupant unconscious and fully stops their breathing within 10 minutes, resulting in a swift, painless death. As stated by Pete, we have had long, happy, healthy, fulfilled lives, but here we are in old age and it does not do nice things to you. The idea of watching the slow degradation of Chris's mental abilities is horrific to me. Obviously, I would care for her to the point I could not, but she has nursed enough people with dementia throughout her career to be adamant that she wants to remain in control of herself and her life. Assisted dying gives her that opportunity, and I would not want to go on living without her. Morbid Coincidences, Part 12. A few years after singing the hit song Ain't No Mountain High Enough, Diana Ross lost her ex-husband in a tragic mountain climbing accident. In 1902, the Mount Pelée eruption killed all 30,000 people in a village except for a prisoner who was on death row. He was locked up deep underground in solitary confinement, which served as the perfect shelter from the blast. In 2015, a man swimming near Huntington Beach, California was suddenly struck in the back by a great white. After making it ashore and going to the hospital, doctors assured him that he'd be fine. Upon seeing his x-rays, they realized he had a cancerous tumor that they were just barely able to remove in time. In Bermuda, 1974, 17-year-old Erskine Eben was struck and killed by a taxi driver while riding his moped. Almost exactly a year later, his twin brother Neville was riding that same moped when he was struck and killed by the same taxi driver, carrying the same passenger on the same street. These are some morbid facts about Ted Bundy. Bundy was once genuinely in love with a woman named Stephanie Brooks, who had long dark hair parted down the middle. But after she rejected him in the late 60s, he went on to kill more than 30 young women, all with long dark hair parted down the middle. This is a photo of Bundy's VW Beetle in which he removed the passenger seat so that he could hide his kidnapped victims on the floor. Bundy proposed to his wife Carol Ann Boone while he was on trial for the murder of a 12-year-old girl. A few years after Bundy was sentenced to death, the couple managed to have a baby girl named Rosa. Even after listening to the serial killer's chilling interview tapes, Ted Bundy's mother believed that her son was innocent until the day she died. Her last words to him just before his execution were, "You'll always be my precious son." These are some disturbing facts about nature that you wish you never knew. The black swallower is a deep-sea fish that can swallow animals more than 10 times its own mass thanks to its expansive stomach. This 7-inch swallower was found dead after it tried to digest a 34-inch mackerel. Otters in the Amazon are apex predators that can grow up to 6 feet long. They've been known to prey on small anacondas and alligators when fish are unavailable. Female ducks are raped so frequently that many have developed a second decoy vagina through evolution. They can offer it to intruders that they don't want to be impregnated by. Immediately after banging, a female praying mantis will rotate her head 180 degrees and eat the head of the male. Therefore, the male has an extra brain in its rear so it can continue mating without a head. Real-life horror stories, Part 1. In the 1980s, a woman went on a vacation getaway where singles could meet other singles. She quickly thought she'd met the man of her dreams and decided to sleep with him that night. But when she woke up in the hotel room the next morning, the man was gone and there was a small wooden coffin on the table next to her. Inside was a note that read, "You are now HIV positive. Welcome to the world of AIDS." All of the snow used in The Wizard of Oz was 100% pure asbestos. The 1981 movie Roar is considered to be the most dangerous film to ever shoot. Over 70 crew members who worked with the animals suffered injuries like bone fractures, scalpings, and gangrene. Much of the footage capturing the injuries was included in the film, resulting in a lot of real blood on screen. This is what true horror looks like. In 2016, 13-year-old Abigail Williams and her friend Libby German were hiking on a trail in Indiana when they disappeared. A search team was sent out for them, and their bodies were found the very next day. The last known photo of Abigail, as well as photos of an unidentified man, were found on Libby's phone. There was also an audio clip of presumably the same man saying the phrase, "down the hill." No arrests have been made so far, but law enforcement has assured locals that the case has not yet gone cold. Weird War Facts, Part 2. In 1973, the U.S. Army developed an anti-tank grenade by hollowing out a Nerf football and filling it with explosive charges. However, the prototype never made it to the battlefield, since the explosives gave the ball a wild and unpredictable flight. According to the Geneva Conventions, if you play dead to kill an enemy in a war scenario, then you are committing a war crime. During World War II, it was common for soldiers to keep photos of their loved ones under transparent grips on their M1911 pistols. They were known as sweetheart grips. Weird Space Facts, Part 1. In 1954, Ann Hodges was hit by a softball-sized meteorite while taking a nap in her Alabama home. The odds of this happening are less likely than winning the Powerball, as Hodges was put in the history books as being the only human to ever be hit by a meteorite. This is the clearest photo ever taken on the surface of Venus. If the sun was scaled down to the size of a white blood cell, the Milky Way galaxy would be the size of the continental United States. When Michael Collins took this photo in 1969, he was the only human, living or dead, not contained within the frame of it. Weird Movie Facts, Part 4. Actor Barkhad Abdi only received $65,000 for his award-winning role in the movie Captain Phillips. After production, he returned to selling mobile phones at his brother's shop in a Minneapolis mall. Dwayne Johnson's beard in the movie Hercules was made out of the testicle hair of a yak. Actress Tammy Lynn Leppert, who played a small role in the movie Scarface, disappeared soon after filming. She hasn't been seen nor heard from since 1983, when she was only 18 years old. Paranormal Activity had a budget of only $15,000 but made nearly $200 million at the box office. During the first screening, people started walking out, and studio executives thought that the movie was bombing. They later learned that the viewers were leaving because they were too scared to continue watching.